of the segue, thinking through I'm ridiculous. I'm sorry. Thinking through some of the possible outcomes in these categories. Rhonda, what would you say a group that's coming for connection? What are some legitimate outcomes from folks who are coming for that reason?
Well, I'm thinking of a family. You're a family maybe with a teenager or maybe a college person, and you want to reconnect family ideas. So for me, that's a good connection. Or maybe it's just a group of people that are from college that want to come back and they want to reconnect, and not necessarily from where they came from, but where are they now? And how does that fit in their lives? I like the connection. I do, but I don't expect anything from that other than I'm going to still love you next year. I hope we can do this again kind of thing.
Plenty of psychological research that shows that laughter is important to the bonding of a team, shared experience, shared memories. So it's not that it doesn't have value. It's just let's be clear about the value and the expectation is if the design of the program, if the reason they're calling you is really X, trying to connect, then you need to be okay as an educator, as a facilitator, with that being the outcome. So I've seen where this gets complicated, where organizations were very focused on, hey, we want to really discover and develop, and that's the most important to us. So we're going to make sure folks learn. And the people coming didn't want that. And facilitators were imposing that on them, and there was tension, and it didn't work, and it was awkward. And it's like, hey, you guys just want to have a good time and be out of the office? Yes. Okay. Let's go play. And that's okay. That is 100% okay, because that's why they were coming.
But, if their leader did not see that and we didn't get that out of the initial conversation, we now have conflict between what the leader wants and what the team wants to do. And how does a facilitator in their mind and in reality put that back together again? Because that's our responsibility.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad, Rhonda, that you brought up this idea of, does the facilitator serve the client, i.e. who pays the bills, who's responsible for the event occurring, or do you serve the participants, i.e. the people actually doing the experience who are under your care, and to which is your primary responsibility? And we're not going to answer that question today.
But we will talk about that.
That is a future topic.
That's a whole podcast in its own, or maybe 2 or 3 or 4. So yeah. And that's something to be thinking about, even when you're thinking about these categories. If you're the person that's setting this up, what is your real agenda? And if you're the person that's attending, what is your real agenda? What do you want? What do you want out of this?
I was responsible for setting up a team building thing for my own team at one point, and at another site. And I told them, honestly, hey, you guys have laser tag and we don't. And
yes.
Whatever we learn is fine, but I know you guys are good at laser tag, and I just really want to play it. So go ahead and change whatever your agenda is, because if we don't do laser tag, I'm not going to be okay. And that's okay, because that was important to the client. And the team loved it. We still did a bunch of discovery learning while we were there.
I was there. That was a great day. And I was good at laser tag, too.
And something I learned from Tom Leahy years ago. If you guys don't know Tom, he is just a guru in the experiential learning and challenge course industry. So much respect for Tom. If you ever get a chance to take his Elements of Choice workshops, they're fantastic. But one of the things I learned from Tom was this idea that people, especially group leaders, think that the experience that they had is automatic to the participants. So, for example, if I went to summer camp when I was 14 and I jumped off the pamper pole and caught the trapeze bar, and that was a defining moment in me overcoming my fear of heights or whatever I was dealing with emotionally, and that was this epic memory, there's this idea that if I put other people in that same situation, they will get the same thing that happened to me. They will get that same experience. So sometimes when people call, that's in their mind. So they're thinking, if I can just get people to jump off the pole or go down the zip line or do those kind of things, they will have the same impactful experience that I had. And that's just not true.
And how do you tell that person that that's not true?
I'm candid.
Good.
I think and kindly and being candid and kind is not my primary strength. So I'm glad Rhonda's here, so she can correct us.
That's my strength. I don't think so.
Oh man, we need a third person.
Yeah,
Rhonda.
we do.
Yeah, but I think that's a real conversation to say. Just so you know that folks will have different experiences. And I think one of the things that I do like to say and like to think about, and I have not adapted this for COVID, but prior to COVID, I estimate about a third of the people when you're dealing with an adult population, this is definitely different when you're dealing with kids, but when you're dealing with an adult population, going to a team building event, about a third of those people are apprehensive. They don't want to be there. They think it's a waste of time, or they've had a bad experience that they're superimposing, this is going to be like that. About a third of the people are on the fence. The jury's still out. They don't know. It could be good. It could be bad. They may have had bad experiences in the past, but they haven't made up their mind yet. And a third is excited. And obviously this is different with different audiences and different organizations. But in general, I've seen that pattern over the last 20 years there's a big chunk of folks who don't want to be here and had a negative experience. And I tell a group leader that even in the initial conversation is, what are you doing to prepare your team before they come? That's a whole nother conversation about how do we prepare folks. I think we'll talk about that in that client versus participant conversation about preparation and what that looks like.
Yes, because that is another whole, it seems like every little topic we bring up is like, oh, this is big. This is really big. But it is. And see, I thought that was eloquent the way you said that, because in my mind, I'm saying, buddy, you can give me your money, but it's not going to come out the way you think it is. And let's talk about what that's going to look like, because it's nothing like what you think. And that third of the people that doesn't want to be there, you're right. What did they think they're doing? I bet $25 you didn't tell them they're jumping off a pole.
and if you're dealing with adults and employees, then the ones that don't want to be there is a whole mess of.
Yes.
Oh man.
That's another whole conversation. I know it is, but it's important to have these conversations before we step into that episode, or you might not obviously think of those things. So we're just picking out little pieces that in a facilitator's mind, these are the things that should be tumbling around in there.
Let's turn that into some questions. So what are some questions a facilitator can ask prospective clients about their goals and outcomes that can help avoid some of the pitfalls we've talked about so far?
I think that one of the questions that I would ask right off the bat is, how well do you know your team? How many people are on your team, and how well do you know them, and how well do they know each other? Because you can have people feeding off of each other, and what does that look like? And that also gives me the idea of how connected you are. You know, are you just trying to fix something because you really don't want to deal with it, or have you dealt with it? And this is another way of stepping up. So my first question is, who is your team? Who do you think your team is? How are they relating to each other? What's happening there? So I think that's big. What outcomes do you want from this situation, and why do you want them? What are you going to do with this information? Whether it's just, I want to connect with you, or I want to learn something. What's your why? And is your why the same as your team's why? Have you had a meeting with them? Are you all going in the same direction, or are you bringing me 25 people going in 25 different directions? Because the outcomes of these are going to be very different.
I don't know why we don't do this more, and I don't know if it's just a practical logistics thing or people are busy, but whoever said that the group leader is the only person I can talk to. So what access can I have to your team? And I think, if you're coming to do a 3-hour event where you climb the zip line and then get a beer later, I don't need I don't need the life history of each member of your team. But if you're in, that development category, or especially that overcome category, I want to be able to do some sort of individual assessment with each member of the team as they are coming, and hear from them. What is this team really like? Because if you don't, you'll be doing that in the event, and you'll be playing catch up the whole time.
I love that. And that is something that really should be considered in this. And I'm going to give you an example. I remember an event that we did as a team, and the outcome was very dysfunctional. So we ended on a note that even the debrief couldn't put us back together again. It was our shipping. We were shipping.
Oh.
You know what I'm talking about.
I led that event, so.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about, it wasn't all you. It wasn't all you. But we left that event with people going in so many different directions, and had that conversation happened up front, there would have been a very, very different outcome from that, because it would have been information that could have been used to pull it all back together again. And that wasn't a leader misfunction. That was a group misfunction. And that can happen so easily, so easily.
I'm just chuckling because I'm like, yep, I got to own that one. Other questions we can ask. Obviously, there's logistics questions. There's how many people. What does time look like in your organization is something I think about. Do meetings end on time, or do people show up early? What are you doing next if it's part of a longer event or retreat? Maybe you're only working with the client for 1 day out of a 3-day stay somewhere. What are the overall goals of your 3-day retreat versus what you're doing here?
What's the comfort level? We've come from a ministry that handles the comfort level. But if you're just the facilitator on something, or what do you need to have there? I need comfort food when I do this stuff. What does that look like for the leader? He might say, oh, you don't need anything. But in reality, when you get 25 people in a room and there's nothing, you have a problem. So how are we going to make people feel comfortable inside and out? What does that look like? What does the room look like? So where are we taking these people? What does that feel like when they come back in from a climb and they've had all of their senses discombobulated in some way? And then if we bring them back to an outhouse, I mean, it's going to be like, this is not working. So there's so many pieces involved with this that really a checklist would be helpful as a facilitator to say, this is what we would do. Does this work for this group? And maybe an aside from that is, no, that's not going to work, but this is. Your wife's checklist, see, It has a purpose.
Well, I think I got inspired by the Checklist Manifesto by Atul Gawande. It is a fantastic book. At various times, I'll be mentioning books because I just love to read, try to read about 70, 75 books a year. And Checklist Manifesto, check it out.
I love
Pun intended. We just lost all listeners. Your needs assessment needs to be in a written form that is reproducible, digestible, and often using modern technology. So if you send somebody a Word document or a Google Doc for them to edit, like that's not a very high bar. Survey software exists for a reason. Any final thoughts? This has flown by today, Rhonda. So final thoughts on what a facilitator thinks about before a group comes.
I think we hit on the main pieces. What I'm taking away from this is that that's just the basics. Be prepared for it to grow bigger than that.
My final thoughts. The job of facilitation starts well before you're seeing them for the first time. We didn't even talk about the facilitator's preparation before they get here, talking with the group leader. And we know that not every facilitator is going to be able to communicate with the group leader or the members of the group. I'm excited about what we've covered today, and I'm starting to lose my voice, so we're gonna call it there. Thank you again. Did we laugh?
We laughed. We did.
Did we thank somebody?
Mr. Bacon, we certainly did laugh. Yes, and we both thanked somebody. That was great. I love that.
And we answered a question. Fantastic. We had fun. Thank you, everyone, for attending WorkPlay Solutions podcast and in our special series, Inside the Mind of a Facilitator. We'll see you next week.
Take care. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So what does the facilitator think about